Dobro večera. I always have to wait a few seconds, almost 10 seconds. I think there's a lag when I watch the replays on these live streams when it actually starts from that moment until you can actually view it and hear me. Because I always say good evening, it's missing at the beginning of these live streams. Otherwise, I am back in Odesa on the shores of the Black Sea. Actually got the port right in front of me on this direction. And behind me you can see the Primorsky Steps, also known, or at least previously known as the Potemkin Steps, after the famous film Battleship Potemkin that was shot. And there's, I guess, partly in Odessa, and there was a famous scene on these steps in the film. It's an old black and white film, I think from the 1920s. I've seen it a few times. And I am back here in Odessa. I was in Kazakhstan for almost 2 weeks. And this is a little bit more of a spontaneous live stream because there have been some changes politically here in Odessa since I left, and I thought it'd be good to update you in case you were planning to come here to Ukraine. And I will also give you a little bit of a debriefing about my trip to Kazakhstan, which was pretty amazing, I have to say. It was definitely a huge shame I hadn't been back in Kazakhstan for 2 whole years, but the trip made up for it, and I will be going back there pretty soon. So if you're new to this channel, my name is Connor Klein. I help high-level men with living their best lives, their dream lives, in a region that I refer to as New Europe. So it's the countries in between Germany and Russia. And normally I'm helping my clients with Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, Moldova, maybe Romania and Czechia going forward, and also Kazakhstan, even though that doesn't fit so nicely into the definition, but it is hard in 2025 to get a good definition because Eastern Europe really isn't a good way to describe the part of Europe that I'm helping my clients with. That's Eastern Europe today is more kind of like Russia and Belarus, what's ever under Russian occupation or control. I have a video actually about what is Eastern Europe today. I'll link it down below when I review this and I add in the chapters and stuff a little bit later on, or you can go and look at it's like for about a year ago on my channel. And back between 2020 and say 2022, I was exclusively here in Ukraine. I documented almost the entire country for guys who wanted to come here. It was very popular, especially with the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns in a lot of other parts of the world, that a lot of guys were moving to Ukraine. And I documented most of the country. I think there was only a few places I didn't go to that were at least under Ukrainian governmental control at the time, because I couldn't go to Crimea or to certain parts of Donbass, even from 2014 to 2020, well, until now, because I obviously can't go back to them either. Just can't go back to a lot of the places I documented, especially in Kherson and Zaporizhzhia Oblast. And nowadays, I still make these live streams and some videos for Ukraine because I do have clients that I help with coming here. Normally, they're guys who have a Ukrainian wife, partner. That's the majority of them, and they are buying property here, real estate, and they're looking to get visas. And I did have one client who came because he actually wants to relocate even with the war. And we went to Moldova and Ukraine together. I was back in August, and he's probably going to move to Moldova, which was a bit of a surprise, but it shows the value in doing the trip. We went to a few cities, and he figured out with a lot of under my tutelage, which would be the best places for him to consider moving to. And I do these live streams a lot from Ukraine as kind of a public service, so that you see actually with your own 2 eyes what's going on, and you have my 2 cents. I have a background in international relations. I studied the best school in the world for it, actually, Johns Hopkins. I had a specialization in this region. I worked as a lawyer at the EU institutions. So I have a pretty sound background and set of analytical skills to provide a little bit more insight. Plus, I'm actually here on the ground. And that's what makes this channel probably pretty unique from the Ukrainian experience. No, there's no one else talking about life stuff. I think I do have Johnny FD, who's up in Kiev and traveling around a bit at times, who gives you, I guess, also a bit of an insight into life in Ukraine. But actually helping guys with moving or considering the better options, live a good lifestyle, then it is this channel at the moment is the best spot for sure, giving you some unique insights. So I'm going to first give you a little bit debriefing, I think, about, well, I'll start with the situation here in Odessa, and then afterwards I'll debrief as to Kazakhstan. So you definitely want to watch that if you are interested in the options in the region. As I said, my clients I normally help nowadays with the alternatives to Ukraine, because obviously up until the invasion I was here for over 2 years, and most of the content and the guys who were helping were actually based in Ukraine. The majority of them, understandably, most of them left, and they don't find living in a country with the biggest war in Europe since World War II that appealing. So yeah, mainly I've helped my clients with spending time in Kazakhstan, as we just did, in Moldova, in Poland, well, really only in Warsaw, the capital, and Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. I like Latvia a lot. I think Riga is one of the best cities that is not talked about enough. So what has changed here in Odesa? The mayor of Odesa has been stripped of his Ukrainian citizenship. This happened a few days ago when I was sitting in Almaty in Kazakhstan. I was reading a lot about it, watching him actually defend himself in Ukrainian on Ukrainian TV. But there have been accusations for many years that he is also a citizen of Russia. And you don't need to be a genius to figure out what might be the problem with that in light of the Russo-Ukrainian War. In fact, holding public office in Ukraine, you're not allowed to be a dual national. Not sure if that's absolute today because they've just brought in a new law, but in principle, definitely having Russian citizenship and holding public office in Ukraine during a time of war, with the biggest war in Europe since World War II, not compatible. I think most people understand why that would be a problem. He has always denied having Russian citizenship. And these accusations are probably almost 10 years old that he actually has one. And he has not been charged with any crime. He's not been accused of treason. And although his attitude, we'll say from 2014 to 2022, didn't really reassure a lot of people that he was really committed to Ukrainian statehood and independence and Odesa being part of Ukraine. Since 2022, he has been very vocal in saying that he's a Ukrainian patriot. In any case, his citizenship has been taken away from him. That means he automatically lost the ability to be mayor of the city. The city was then, the next day, put under a military administration. So I'm going to explain a little bit what that means. And he will probably challenge it in the courts, having watched him on TV. So this might be, he's going to challenge the fact they stripped him of his citizenship, and he claims he doesn't have Russian citizenship. SBU, the Ukraine's intelligence services, they produced a photo of what they say is his Russian passport that was issued in 2015. So even after Russia invaded in 2014, because they invaded Crimea and parts of eastern Ukraine, parts of Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast, that's known collectively as the Donbas region. So that would be quite a big scandal if he had gone and either had his Russian citizenship renewed or his passport, his travel document renewed, or he actually acquired it at that time. There's also some other accusations to do with taxes and paying taxes in Russia, and him and his family. So that will probably be challenged in the courts, but for now it's under military administration. So to explain the situation, if you were to come here to Ukraine, we have martial law that has been introduced on, I think it was the second day of the 2022 invasion, so it was on the 25th of February, and that gives the military a set of powers that they would not normally have in a peacetime, right? So they have increased powers to stop people. They obviously need to coordinate in terms of the defense of the country. So the military gets more powers than in peacetime. Again, should be pretty easy to follow the reason for that. And even though the military has more powers, it is not like some sort of military dictatorship. So I mean, my image of military dictatorship is probably from like stories of what happened in the 70s and 80s in Latin America or something. But basically, they have increased powers, but there's still certain competencies that are handled by the local civilian administration, right? So the elected representatives, either on a oblast level or a city level. But some of those competencies were given to the military. When it is a military administration, then there's even more powers given to the military, and basically the head of the city becomes the head of the military administration. He has been brought in. His name is Sergei Lysak, if I pronounce his name correctly. And he was previously in charge in the center of Ukraine in Dnipro or Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. And he has taken over, and maybe Trukanov will win the courts and, you know, he will get his citizenship back, but it's already under military administration. So my guess is that he would no longer be in power. So that means that the military have the ability to increase more, I guess, controls. And importantly, for Odesa, they will have more authority to prepare the defenses of the city. And whilst there's no risk of some sort of sea or land invasion by Russia of this city at the moment, I'm looking out at the sea here, Black Sea, because they're too far away. They're all the way. In 2022, they were just off the coast here of the Black Sea Fleet, but that has been, to a certain extent, destroyed by the Ukrainian military, the Russian Black Sea Fleet. So they are far away. I'm not even sure if they're even in Crimea anymore. I think most of them in Novorossiysk, actually in de jure, Russia. And the Russian land forces are still stuck on their side of the Dnieper River, which is way up this direction up there. And that is quite far away. They'd have to get through Kherson, Mykolaiv to get down here. So there's no real risk of that. However, the city is subject, probably on about a weekly basis, to significant Russian drone and rocket attacks, and preparing the defenses for that. Now the military should get more power, and that would be good from my point of view as someone who's here, that they're able to coordinate those defenses better, because there have been some complaints by the Ukrainian military about the handling of that with the Odesa authorities prior. So on a practical level, if you were to come here to Ukraine as a foreigner, it makes, up until now, from what I can see, got back from Kazakhstan on Friday night, I didn't see any difference whatsoever. Because obviously I'm not party to what they do with air defense and how they arrange that. I think that is going to be one of the real significant change on a practical level if to come here. I think for the future, it is a big signal that the kind of old school way that Odesa was run, which under Turkanov and under all the other previous leaders basically before, since independence, is that corruption was a huge issue, and there will be a change of how the city is run going forward. I think that is very clear. I don't know who would win if there were new elections. Would Turkanov still remain popular, or would there be some sort of new candidate anyways? And I guess in the future we'll find out. If he gets his citizenship back, then I guess he could run in some other type of election going forward. So that is what I think it signals. It signals that there will be big changes in Odesa. And I did allude to that. I made a live stream. I've already linked it down below, where I put like the end, la fin, in French on the screen, and said, Odesa is not going to be the same after this war is concluded. It's not going to be the same city as it was before. I think that just too much has happened in between. And this is another signal that the city is going to be run in a different way, and hopefully a lot less corrupt way going forward, which will be good for the seat and the people who live here. Not so good for corrupt officials probably, but there you go. That is kind of a signal of changing of the guard, and that is what I think it means the most. Just to recap on, if you want to come here to Ukraine, I know that's not going to be for most guys who watch my channel. Most of you still don't want to come back. That's your own decision. I have done a few live streams before I left for Kazakhstan where I explain the risk level, where I analyze it. And the too long didn't read version is that the statistical chance of being in the wrong place, the wrong time from a Russian attack, whether they deliberately attacked the civilians, or which you almost got your Irish boy once when they did that along the seafront down in Arcadia, or it's just the fact that they hit the wrong thing, or the debris falls somewhere if the Ukrainians shoot a rocket out of the sky. So the chance of that, of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, is actually like 1 in a million per capita per day. If you were to run the stats on it, I have lots of, go and watch those other live streams if you want to explore it in more depth, which you should do if you are planning a trip here. And then I go through all the logistics of getting here. Basically, if you have, say, an American passport or a British passport, you're from some allied country that has visa-free to Ukraine, none of those rules have changed. You just show up the border with your passport. Just make sure it's valid for at least 3 months, because I had to be careful of that recently. There's still 3 months in it. And then you can enter. You have 90 days visa-free every 180. So it's not like you can just leave for 1 day and come back in. You spend 90 days here, then you have to leave for 90, then come back again, or any sort of combination. If you want to stay longer, then you can get a visa. And actually getting a visa for Ukraine is one of the, I think if you have one of those nationalities, like you're from the European Union, you're from Canada or Australia, or from the US, then it's actually one of the easiest countries to get a visa to live in, I think. Well, you can see the demand is not super high at the moment. Let's be frank about it. But in general, it's actually a pretty good option if you're looking for that kind of simplicity in terms of getting residency, which many of my clients still are, because they have a Ukrainian wife or girlfriend and they want to come here and not have to deal with 90 days every 180 visa free restriction. So that is one thing to do. If actually you were planning to open a business here in Ukraine, because I've been talking, I have my business network here. It's kind of very interesting, especially with this war, because there is a lot of investment going on and there are a lot of business opportunities, because even in a time of crisis, as big as the national crisis is, there are people who are providing value into the economy where it is still profitable. So you still have big industries like the agricultural industry. You have other guys who are either my clients or guys I know here who are buying real estate, and guys who are opening businesses with the defense industry in particular, because one of the consequences of this war is that Ukraine is basically at the cutting edge of military development out of necessity. I mean, it's tragic that that's the industry that's kind of flourishing in Ukraine, and I guess to a certain extent of Russia. And there are lots of new developments, and I meet a lot of people who come here from Western Europe in particular who are involved in that kind of industry, because this is where to be, and they are doing a lot of collaborations. So if you're actually interested in opening a company, then write me. My email address is down below in the description. It is connor@connorklein.com, but almost everybody spells it incorrectly, so just go and copy and paste it. That is why I put it in the description to this live stream, and can help you with that. I will probably make a video on that this week, maybe, about opening a company in Ukraine. I think it's something that, having talked to a lot of business guys here, that it seems to be a good idea to be helping you with that if you are so inclined. So if you just want to come here and visit, and you want to save yourself a lot of time figuring out the logistics, ChatGPT can help you to a certain extent for sure, but what it can help you with is hospitality and where to go to cafes, bars. There are even clubs open, because the law is that you can't be on the street. We have curfew here in almost the entire country except for Zakarpatski Oblast, which is in the very west. So Uzhhorod is the city there. I also have a video about that city. If I haven't linked it down below, I'll do so later this evening. And if you want to save a lot of time, because ChatGPT can't tell you where to go, I already checked that. Then I have my guide for going to Ukraine during the war. It's down below. You can go and grab that. I also have a similar guide for neighboring Moldova. So a lot of guys are flying into Chisinau, it's nearest airport. It's what actually I did on the way back, the way to and back from Kazakhstan. Flew into that airport and took the bus down to Odesa. If you take it straight out of the airport, it's about 4 to 4.5 hours, including the border crossing. But I would encourage you to go into the center of Chisinau, because I think it is developing all the time. It's getting nicer and nicer in Chisinau. And for the Chisinau guide, I spent 4 summers, large parts of 4 summers actually, researching, going to all the cafes, restaurants, and they have a lot of them in Chisinau, and all the vineyards, because I rated or reviewed about 10 of them. So all that's down below. You can go and grab that. And if you want some further advice about coming here to Ukraine, there are 2 options. One is to jump on a consulting call. I have a link to that, my consulting service down below, where I can help you with your strategy for coming here, or going to one of the alternatives that I help my clients with as well. I'll come to that when I talk about Kazakhstan briefly in a few moments. And also then I have my in-person experience. I've been living in this region, and in particular in Ukraine, even with this, since the invasion, about, well, not quite half the time, but we'll say maybe 40% of the time I've actually been here in Ukraine, and maybe 60% has been outside. I guess I should probably tot that up after almost 4 years of this hot war, shall we say. So I have a background, as I said, as a lawyer, also in international relations, and I have the premier channel for coming to this region, and definitely for the countries that I help my clients with in general. There isn't so much content to help guys, particularly with Latvia, Kazakhstan, Moldova. There's almost none, never mind Ukraine and actually coming here. There is a lot for Poland, so that is a different story. I help my clients a lot with networking in the Belarusian and Ukrainian diasporas there. That is what I help them with a lot, is building up their social circle. Of course, going out and, well, it's kind of different once we're outside of Ukraine, because there's a lot of nightlife and partying. Again, I'll come to that when we talk about Kazakhstan, but for Ukraine, it's a bit of a different setup. I did bring a client recently because he was considering coming and living in Ukraine. We combined with Moldova. He seems to prefer Moldova. So that is, I guess, the big value that he got out of the trip, was figuring out that actually Ukraine is not the place that he wants to move to. Even after this war is over, he actually preferred Chisinau. So I will be helping other clients who want to come here, and I have my business networks in many of the cities. Don't have in every city, but definitely here in Odessa, pretty strong. Also up in Kiev and in, I would say, Lviv. And Chernovtsi and Uzhhorod are 2 cities that I will bring clients to. And those clients, the people are looking for more quality of life, smaller town feel. Anyways, all of that, follow the link down below in the description and fill out the application forms by application only. And if it's a good fit, we'll jump on a short strategy call together, and it could be you with me, maybe here in Odessa or another city in Ukraine or somewhere else in the region. Let me just check before I go into Kazakhstan. Is there anything else in particular that I wanted to say? Yeah, keep your questions coming in the comments. I will come to a Q&A part of the live stream pretty soon. And yeah, just a general comment about, if you haven't seen the other live streams yet, everything kind of works here in Ukraine. We do have curfew from 12 midnight until 5 a.m. So that does restrict what you can do. You're not supposed to be out on the street. It is pretty strict here in Odessa. And like your taxi app's not going to work after midnight. However, in Lviv, it's a lot more liberal nowadays. Taxi apps work. There are even restaurants. There's at least one restaurant open 24/7, actually at the train station. So if that's where you're coming in, you wouldn't even be able to eat if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's definitely a bit more relaxed about it. But things like your credit cards are going to work. You can go to an ATM, withdraw money. There are lots of money changers everywhere. Your phone, if you have an international plan, your roaming will even work here in Ukraine. I always encourage clients to buy a local SIM card just because it's more cost effective, and it takes just a couple of minutes to do. Just either buy an electronic SIM, so you don't even have to put in a different SIM card nowadays, and then you have the local plan, and you can go through that. Most of my clients in reality, especially the Americans, they seem to have these international plans where the data is not as fast as it would be if they bought the local card, but it doesn't really seem to cost them very much. So that's, regardless, I would just say get a local SIM card. So internet should work pretty good, even when you're outside of the city on the road. When I was coming from Chisinau, yeah, I didn't have any problems. It seemed to, I think it worked almost the entire way. Maybe with at least 90% of the way was working with high speed, so I was watching videos all the time. And yeah, cafes are open, bars are open. Nightlife is a bit curtailed, especially here in Odessa compared to before 2022. But in general, life goes on. We just have air alerts, and as I said, more or less once a week, we'll say in the last 3 or 4 months, that we've had massive drone and rocket attacks by Moscow, by the Kremlin on this city. It is a bit less than the risk level in Kyiv in terms of the number of strikes, and more than you're going to see in, say, in Lviv or Chernovtsi or Uzhhorod. So that's where it is. Again, it's a personal decision. The statistical chance is actually pretty small that you would be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And other things like petty crime or just crime in general, it's way lower than before. You don't have all the scamming that used to go on that I talked about a lot on this channel. That, I mean, I guess the scammer girls all left. They don't have any victims really hanging out in Odessa since 2022. So I guess they all moved to the scam restaurant that was near to Dubrovnik. It's been long closed. So yeah, otherwise it's pretty safe. I haven't heard of really any issues. Just one person told me it was 2 summers ago that I think they heard about an attempted mugging once, but that's it. And there's just never even heard of any other petty crime and or any real inconvenience, I would say. So it's a personal decision. I would encourage you, if you're thinking in the future that this is a country where there will be lots of opportunities, especially after the war ends, because the country is on a trajectory to join the European Union, and its economy will presumably, it's going to improve a huge amount. So getting in now would be great for your future prospects, and there's a lot of opportunities here in Ukraine. I think it really will be a fantastic place after this war is over, and it's still to a certain extent a fantastic place even now, and a very interesting place to come to, but you do have to make that decision about the risk to your own safety, and I'm not telling you which way to make that decision. Obviously, I have voted with my own feet. I am here quite regularly, as I said, a little bit under half of the time since 2022, and when I had to evacuate, I have been here. So you can see that I feel safe enough. And it is quite different, obviously, to being in a city that's closer to the front, where Russia basically targets everything there and blows up and destroys all those cities. So about Odessa and life here, we're in autumn. It is a bit colder than before. That is a big change for me. And do I have anything else to say about Odessa and Ukraine? Not so much. I think that's the main change, has been what has happened here. And I already included some harbingers to that in my live stream. It was a little bit, I guess I foresaw some of the changes, not exactly, but it is this feeling that the city will be different in the future. So if you're thinking of coming back to Ukraine because you have this image of 2021 or 2020, because a lot of people weren't here with COVID either, who write to me, then it will be quite a different city when you come back. You might like it more, you might like it less. I think its future is going to be very bright. And no one, Russia's a long way away from ever taking this city. So yeah, I get comments on these videos talking about, aren't you scared that Russia's about to take the city? I'm like, always, with what army? They are so far away from Odessa, especially compared to early 2022, where they had some shot. It actually would have been hard to land here. At least that's what military analysts say in any case. And that is not likely to happen. The chances are close to zero at this point. In fact, Russia getting that much closer with the current pace, where they take less than 1% of Ukrainian territory per year at huge expense, means that unless there is a dramatic change in terms of the battlefield, probably technological breakthrough or strategic breakthrough, that is, obviously we can't really foresee that, then the chances are basically zero that that's going to happen. So in terms of Odessa, yeah, as I said in those other live streams, just go and watch them. If you're really interested in coming here, you'll get a lot of value. I see this city being like Dubrovnik in Croatia in the future. Dubrovnik was very badly destroyed in the wars that afflicted the Balkans region in the early 1990s. And yeah, don't even look at it today. Look at it like 15 years ago already. It was thriving and it's a huge tourist mecca. So yeah, everything can be turned around, and Croatia has joined the European Union, and its economy is doing a lot better than Serbia, which took a different path. So that is what I'll say about that. And the only thing really to talk about before I go to the questions is Kazakhstan. So I was in Kazakhstan for about 2 weeks on what I think was one of the best New Europe experiences / Czar experience, which was the old branding of all time. I think it was definitely in the top 3 trips. It was pretty fantastic and it was pretty intense. We were in Almaty. I guess is that a train coming in? In Almaty, which is no longer the capital of Kazakhstan. It is the old capital. The capital was moved in the mid-90s to Astana, which is located in the north of Kazakhstan. Almaty is right in the south, right in the just beside the mountains. You can go skiing. We actually went up to the mountains on last Monday to check it out. My client actually wants to come back again to Almaty with me, and we will celebrate actually maybe his birthday, and we will go skiing. That's kind of the idea in the winter. He's a client who's been with me already in Warsaw, in Riga, in Chisinau, and we've been in Almaty, so 4 places. So if you want an endorsement for my in-person experience, the fact that many of my clients come back more than once, yeah, probably the majority of this stage are actually repeat clients, I would say, as opposed to new clients who maybe come once. And yeah, just Kazakhstan is a hidden gem. It's not talked about very much. Almaty is a city of 2 to 3 million people. We were there at an event, and I will feature that event in a video, at least one video I'm going to make, which will be 3 fashion shows that I went to. So I went to Riga Fashion Week, to a fashion show. I had to cut it a little bit short, the one in Chisinau, because I need to get on the plane for Kazakhstan. That was the Moldovan Brands Runway was the name of it. It was a Moldovan Runway brand. No, Moldovan Brands Runway, which obviously we got the autumn fall collections. And yeah, it was just a super cool event. My client, the reason that we were going there together is that he plays a role in a fashion show in the US, New York Fashion Week, and this was of particular interest to him. Also, it meant that it made sense for him to go to that particular show, but we met so many cool people at it. It was really a fantastic cultural event or societal event in that part of Kazakhstan. And overall, he just had a ball, to be frank. I think it was, of the 4 trips, I would say it was his favorite, and it's the first time he says he wants to come back in a few months to the same city again with me, as opposed to Warsaw. I think he enjoyed Riga over Warsaw, which, I mean, most guys are going to do anyways. Kind of goes without saying. And then Chisinau, it's been unclear where that fit. I think in between the two. But maybe Almaty was actually number 1 overall. I thought as a trip it was pretty amazing. And yeah, just Kazakhstan, the city of Almaty, very clean, a lot to do in terms of restaurants and socializing. And yeah, he was staying at the Ritz-Carlton, beautiful view of the city. You've got the mountains within an hour or so for skiing or just hiking and all that nature stuff. It's a pretty amazing place. There are just so many mountains and lakes and canyon. There's a famous canyon called it's a Canyon. We didn't go on this trip. We went on my last trip. There'll be my vlog from 2023 down below in the description. Go watch that if you're interested. What else to say about Kazakhstan? Kazakhstanis or ethnic Kazakhs definitely have a reputation for being very hospitable to visitors. So they have a great hospitality culture. Price level was very attractive, and it was about the same as being in Ukraine, basically. So quite inexpensive, and nightlife not really the same level as going to, say, Riga in Latvia or Warsaw in Poland. People tend to go out on the Friday night, but it was actually pretty quiet on the Saturday. But yeah, we had basically a ball at that as well. And what else to say? I mean, I'm not a huge fan of horse meat. It's fine to eat once on the trip, but eating it every day is a little bit too much for me. That is the national dish of Kazakhstan. Kazakhs like to eat horses, and but otherwise there's lots of like European or different cuisines there, and the standard, at least if you're going to the good restaurants, is pretty high. Again, it's a city of 2 to 3 million people. Ethnically, it's about, we'll say, 85% Asian and 15% European. Kazakhstan was in the Russian Empire, was in the Soviet Union. Almaty was heavily Russified, so the main language spoken is Russian in Almaty. The country has 2 official languages, Kazakh and Russian. So if you already speak some Russian, it's actually a pretty good city, because you'll be able to use it a lot. You could even learn it there, I think, because most of the city uses Russian on a daily basis. And what else to say about it? It was just a lot of fun partying with obviously the lots of beautiful Kazakhstani women. And yeah, I think we have more, as a European or a North American, my client was from North America, you have more value, automatic value there, because yeah, they have a very positive view of foreigners in general. I think because they don't get, it's not a main tourist destination, so they don't get even that many backpackers, I think, going there. So basically they have most of the foreigners who go and hang out in Astana, the capital, or Almaty, they're more likely to be working in the resource industry. Kazakhstan has huge numbers of resources, so it is wealthier in general than the other countries in Central Asia. And most of the foreigners may work in white-collar jobs. So yeah, the foreigner factor was pretty high. And yeah, overall, it was just a great experience to be back in Kazakhstan. And I always have a ball there. Never had a bad trip to Kazakhstan. I think that's maybe the 5th trip I have to think. So that was maybe 3, and then we had 4. Yeah, it's the 5th time I've been in Kazakhstan. So I will be going back with this client presumably in the winter, so very shortly. And I have another client, actually the client was with me here in Moldova and Ukraine in August. He also wants to come, and we were discussing actually going together in March. So if you're interested in Kazakhstan, it is the new, I guess, hotspot for this channel, considering I've just been there, and I plan to go back with 2 other clients. The original client who was with before, I know he's kind of disappeared. He even paid me a deposit, so I don't know when he actually wants to come back, but I guess if he's watching this live stream, then write me and we'll sort it out. We can go back pretty soon again. And if you are interested, of course, apply down below. There is the application form. I also sent out an email to my email list for New Year's Eve. I think it will be a super cool spot to even celebrate New Year's Eve. As in terms of visa free, most guys watching this presumably have an American passport, a Canadian passport, and a European passport. And of course, you need to always double check these things. And if we were going together, obviously we'd check that first of all. In general, we have 30 days visa free, and then we got to leave, but we can kind of come back in again. I think it's 90 per calendar year that we have visa free. So for a trip, it is pretty good. Long-term staying, it's a lot more complicated. I have business contacts there, done visas. I actually had a consultant with a guy who he said he didn't like the food and stuff in Kazakhstan, and he left, so he didn't need a visa in the end. So kind of surprised by that. He was very upbeat on our call. So it's not for everybody. That's one of the things about this region. You want to find the right spot, and that's why I have the consulting service, and save you going to the wrong country and maybe spending a lot of money and investing time that you won't get back in the wrong city. But we can get you closer, picking the right choice. I have a consulting client who I reference a lot, who was going to go to Warsaw, and then we had the call, and he said he was surprised. He was like, so I should go to Riga. I was like, yeah, and it worked out pretty well for him. So that's another plug for my consulting service down below. So yeah, it's not for everybody. I guess if you don't really like Asian culture, then going to a city that's 85% Asian mightn't be for you. Even if I find it quite familiar for me, and it was in the Russian Empire and Soviet Union, so it's kind of a bit more, I guess, blended. I think Almaty is like a Asian European fusion to a large extent, and that's something that appeals to me. I find it quite appealing. I guess that's kind of saying the same thing again in other words, but yeah, I really enjoyed my time there. And not all of Kazakhstan is going to be the same as that. I think Almaty is my favorite city. Astana, the capital, has also got its pluses. It does get very cold there in winter, especially in Astana. It gets crazy cold because it's on the steppe, and it's just like flat. So the wind is like gonna, send shivers down the spine. So, but I find the center kind of interesting architecturally, and also it's quite modern, and there's a lot going on. Arguably, there's more nightlife in Astana these days than in Almaty. Other cities in Kazakhstan are a little too provincial for my taste. I went to Shymkent, which is the third city on the previous trip, and yeah, it was very much like Uzbekistan in vibe, and that's great maybe for doing some sightseeing, but for me it's not that interesting to spend a lot of time in. I think Uzbekistan is a great country if you are in a couple and you want to go and travel around and eat good food and eat a lot of pilaf or plov and look at the beautiful architecture, because that's less of a steppe culture, so they were more sedentary with an empire, so they have a lot of remnants of that. But for me, it's not as appealing to stay long-term in as Kazakhstan is. Much prefer being in Almaty or Astana than in a city like Tashkent. Also, you should be careful if you are going to go to Uzbekistan with the visa-free rules, because as a European, I can just get on the plane. I have visa-free. But as an American, you need to get an e-visa, and you need to do it at least 3 days before your flight. And many Americans I know, they fail to do that beforehand. There is a way still if you've left it too late, but you need to have booked an onward flight to a third country, and it's quite complicated. And yeah, I talked to someone who, yeah, he was ill-advised at the airport, and then that didn't work, so he had to cancel his flight and go to another part of Central Asia, basically to Tajikistan. So I guess he's having the Tajik experience as opposed to the Uzbek experience. And yeah, so I'll have some content coming from Kazakhstan. Filmed it a lot. I'll have that video on the kind of fashion shows and style in the region. And also, now that I'm almost certainly going back a few times to Kazakhstan, I will have a vlog. I think I'll make it a winter vlog. I have my autumn vlog from a few years ago, and I filmed a lot in the summer. So I'll aim to do a winter vlog, and then if I still have a lot of clients who want to come next summer, then we can make a summer vlog. Also use the footage that I have from 2023 in that finally. So that is about Kazakhstan. I think it's, yeah, I've always been a big fan of Kazakhstan as a place to go to. I think it's just a little bit more complicated to move to permanently. Buying property, if you're not a permanent resident, it's kind of tricky. So there are definitely minuses. There is a bit of pollution in Almaty with the mountains nearby. It kind of traps in the air, but they are improving it. And yeah, improving the infrastructure, I think, especially in Astana, because this is a new city. So different horses for different courses. If that is something that appeals to you, then you have all the links down below. Actually, I'm going to finally write up my guidebook after this trip, I guess. At least I'll make some big progress with it. If you're also interested in the guide, then write me an email, and I'll send you a payment link for it. because I offered it to my mailing list, I think about a year ago or even maybe longer. And I've actually gotten back to that content. But if I'm going to go back, I guess in winter, maybe I don't have a final version for another couple of months. We'll see. So that's what I'll say about Kazakhstan. If you have any questions about it, then either write me on this live stream or on the replay. But if you want some bespoke advice, then just jump in a consulting call, or you want to come and live the New Year experience with me, then you can apply for it down below and you'll have an unforgettable up to a week with me. And yeah, my client, he had an absolute ball, but this is like his 4th trip. So he's obviously pretty committed to the format that I run. So let me have a look at your comments and questions. Where can I find all those videos? I'm not sure which videos you mean. If you mean on the channel, I have a lot of videos linked down below in the description to this live stream that I had anticipated might be relevant. I will update that if you're watching this on replay, probably tonight or tomorrow morning. And otherwise, yeah, just look back in the channel. I just like have hundreds of videos there. And, you know, in particular, my Vodka series, where I go really in depth, and they're normally over half an hour each. So there's a lot of content there. Go look at that playlist as well. I have playlists for Kazakhstan. I have playlists for moving to Ukraine vlogs. Just have a look there in the front page. You have lots of them. Also, if you want to support this channel just with buying me a coffee every week or a borscht, I have some options. If you become a member of the channel, just go look at those as well. That is on the first page. Let's see. Bruce says, glad to see them doing well. Thank you, Bruce. Dan is here. You missed me. Dan, you're trying to be a charmer. Unfortunately, that charm hasn't worked on the ladies of the region as effective as it's worked on me. But kudos for trying. I believe that you are either in Romania. Yeah, I have a client who's actually had a residency permit for Romania for a few years, but he's let it expire. So I'll probably chat to him because he actually come to Odesa about what he wants to do next, because without it, he's going to be limited to 90 days every 180 in Schengen. But I think for his purposes, it's probably fine. I don't think that he needs to be any longer in reality. I think if he makes his base either in Moldova or here in Ukraine, then we'll get we can help with, I can help with getting a visa in either, then that would be fine. Like, he needs to be obviously in the Schengen area. Schengen area is the common travel area in the European Union. To simplify it, I have another video. It's actually the last video on the channel. Go look at that. I'll also link it down below when I watch this on replay. And yeah, so I think for his purposes, when he wants to go to Italy or go to Germany or somewhere else, he'll have enough days if he just becomes resident in Moldova or Ukraine. And then, yeah, he's also back in the States a bit. So kind of interesting that he is moving on from Romania. I noticed that all of these, how to describe them, they're really marketers that have YouTube channels, a lot of them, whether it's in the lifestyle space or the men's advice space in general, some more dating. They all seem to go to Warsaw, and it don't make any sense to me other than the fact they can all hang out with each other. And I guess for that networking opportunity is probably pretty good, but yeah, it's not that appealing to me as the best city in the region, Warsaw. It's lost a bit of its luster from that point of view in the last 2 years. I think it's a great city if you have really good ties in Poland. Maybe you're married to someone who's Polish, then it makes sense. I think Warsaw's a big city with a lot to do. It's pretty safe. Not the most beautiful city. The weather is pretty grim, I think, especially for most of the year. Outside of the summertime, I don't find it that appealing. For me personally, it's kind of cool with the large Ukrainian and Belarusian diasporas. So I think there's just a lot of interesting cultural events going on. Warsaw being kind of like the capital of the region nowadays. Principal city for sure with this war, and Kyiv being obviously less appealing. But yeah, I don't understand why these guys, because a lot of them are single, why they hang out there. It's like, it's not terrible, but it's not really where I would go if I was a single guy. I would go to either Riga. I think Riga's the best, personally. But that's my 2 cents. None of these guys pay attention to my advice in that regard, so nor does Dan here, since he went to Bucharest. That seems to be another city where a lot of those kind of types hang out, but a lot less than in Warsaw. And again, I feel I've kind of failed to see the appeal. I think Bucharest has gotten better than it was 10 years ago when I spent a lot of time. But yeah, just overall, it's not a very appealing city. Of course, it has nice areas like Odesa, but overall, it's a big city. A lot of it's dirty. I think it's quite an aggressive mentality in Bucharest. It's kind of where a lot of Romanians, mainly Romanians, I don't think they have too many immigrants, go to try and make their fortune. And yeah, just not a very appealing city to me to live in. I used to spend a lot of time there a decade ago, and I have great memories, and I had good friends from that time who were mainly Romanian. Yeah, but it's compared to the other options, it's just not my preference. So kind of surprised that so many guys spend their time in Bucharest and Warsaw. But it is what it is. They're not terrible places, but they wouldn't be my cup of tea to live in. Haven't experienced both of them quite a bit. I would just prefer other places. And you have this dichotomy between, say, Moldova, Ukraine, southern Ukraine in particular, climate-wise and quality of produce-wise. There's really no comparison. Once you go to I guess Bucharest falls in that. So maybe the produce is a bit better and the climate is nicer. Because when you go up to Warsaw and the Baltics, yeah, there isn't much sunshine in winter and the quality of the produce is not the same as down here, which is pretty phenomenal. It's one of my favorite places in the world for food. So it just depends what you're looking for in climate. Добрый день. And yeah, so let me look at some more of your questions. Dan says they still got the Polish loophole. Okay, well, that has to be tested, and we'll look at that later. That changed, I think it was the 12th, so we're like 1 week in. And let's see if it's still applicable. Yeah, well, Dan says that Warsaw and Bucharest are the two biggest cities of the former Eastern Bloc. Are there two? No, well, yeah, okay, that are not participants in this war, we'll say. Because also Minsk is probably in that category, but Minsk, forget it, basically 2025. And has chicks. Here's a little newsflash for you, Dan. Every city has women in it. So, yeah, and not so sure I would say that I would rate it particularly good for that reason, since I know that's your only reason really to be in the cities other than cost of living. And yeah, I know, is Bucharest less expensive than Warsaw? Because Warsaw is not a cheap city to live in. Relative to London or New York, yeah, it's obviously cheaper, or commensurate city like, I don't know, because if you take a same size city in Western Europe, I don't think they're really any cheaper than Warsaw or any more expensive than Warsaw. Warsaw is almost the same price. Again, my flat white index, it was, I pay over €4 for my flat white. It's like a coffee that I have, and I like coffee a lot. So it's kind of the same standard I drink in every city. So there's the Big Mac index. I have my flat white index. I pay at least $4.20, so basically $5 in Warsaw. In Ireland, maybe in Dublin I would pay €5, I guess $6 maybe, and somewhere $5.50 to $6. I see it's not a huge difference. Ireland's considered one of the more expensive countries in all of Europe. Here I pay about €2.20, €2.10, depending. Almaty was, yeah, it was even tiny bit less. I think it was like €2 to €2.10. And even in Chisinau, it's like €3.30 I pay. The Baltics I pay around €3.60 to €4. So, yeah, I don't know what it's like in Bucharest nowadays, because I haven't been. Well, it was 3 years ago last time I was there, so I don't remember how much I paid for it. But I can look it up. I just don't think. Maybe it's a little bit cheaper than Warsaw. But yeah, it's just not an appealing city to me overall. Dan is using a pseudonym. Rebranded to New Village Experience. Yeah, well, I mean, if you're going to be mocking of a city like Almaty, which is 2 to 3 million people, obviously you're being a bit silly. And because I think Warsaw is that size, maybe Bucharest is a bit bigger than Almaty, and it's a bit bigger than Warsaw, right? The other cities that I promote, Chisinau is definitely, I guess, 600, 700,000 people. It's obviously smaller, less going on. I think it's improving all the time, though. So it just depends on what you want out of a city. And then Riga, it's really a city around 1 million. Here in Odesa, it's 1 million as well, a little bit over 1 million. Obviously, you have Kyiv, which is 4 million. It's even bigger, but you have to be willing to come here during the war for that. experience. So yeah, some of them are smaller. I think that's true. Again, it depends on your preference. If you want to be a city that's over 2 million, then your options nowadays, if you're not willing to come to Kiev, is I guess Warsaw, Bucharest, Almaty, and Astana is almost the same size as like over 1 million, and it has a bigger city vibe, just the way it's laid out. And I guess you could consider Prague, even though it's a bit smaller. And Prague is a cool city as well, with a large Ukrainian diaspora. But yeah, if you really want to see that big, I guess that's what you're limited to. But Dan's claim that it has chicks. Well, everywhere has chicks. But yeah, I would not say. Again, I'm since he's a single guy, presumably still Riga. And it just depends what you want. If you want model level beauty, tall blonde women, that's where you're going to find them the most. You're going to find them in Riga or in Tallinn. But Tallinn is a lot smaller field. So yeah, I think for lifestyle, I would rather live in Riga than Tallinn. For that reason. Tallinn is just a little bit too small for me. I personally want a city that's close to 1 million in terms of size. So that's why Odesa is good for me. Chisinau is quite small, but it's a lot of fun in the summer in particular. But maybe a little bit too small to live in all the time for me personally, but that's my preference. So if you want somewhere, or you're fine with being somewhere that's smaller than, say, 1 million, then you could consider going to a place like Chisinau or going up to a place like Tallinn or even Vilnius. It's kind of economically booming at the moment because a lot of the investment is pulled out of Estonia and Latvia because they're worried about a Russian invasion there. And in Lithuania, though they're also kind of the probability is almost as high, but they're less exposed. So I guess that's why investors are making different calculation. It's kind of interesting from my point of view because I wouldn't make that same calculation at all. I think it's misguided, but it is what it is what investors have been doing in the last 2 years a lot. And if you want a city around 1 million, you have a lot of choices in the region. You have here, Odessa, you have, Riga, and you could go to Gdansk in the north of Poland, also a super cool city. I like it a lot. And yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Krakow. It's very touristic and kind of overrun by tourists in my experience. I didn't enjoy it as much. It's also got an issue with pollution quite a lot as well. But very beautiful center. Personally, I prefer to live in Lviv over Krakow. They're kind of similar cities. But again, it depends on what level of infrastructure you want and how wealthy you want it to be. So, but I don't think that the guy who commented down really cares about any of these things too much. He's there for, as he wrote, the chicks. And I don't know why he picked those cities because, he didn't fit in very well in Warsaw. And maybe he fits in better in Bucharest. He can write a comment if he wants. But I wouldn't be going there as a single guy to Bucharest. I don't think it's the optimal place to be if that's your preference. But if you really want a big city, then you're a bit limited. But again, I wouldn't pick Bucharest as the spot. It's just not my scene. Having spent a lot of time there, and as I said, have a lot of great memories from Bucharest about 10 years ago when I spent a lot of time there. Even learned okay Romanian. So someone says, Privyet. I think that is that Wayne there, or is this a different profile? But anyways, Привет, salut, Привет. From Odessa, Mama, on the shores of the Black Sea, free Ukraine. And last night I didn't go out partying because I was a bit tired after my traveling back from Kazakhstan, and I went for a drink with a business friend. We discussed a lot of things. That's why I bring up, if you were interested in opening a company in Ukraine, to write me an email. Again, it's connor@connorkline.com. And I plan to talk less about what Dan has referenced there, because I think that's just really a byproduct at the end of the day of living a very high-level lifestyle. I think if you are making that your main focus, it kind of points to a scarcity and a lack in many things. And I'm going to speculate that women pick up on that intuitively as well. So I want this channel to focus a bit more on, as it has done for the last few years, more on business, culture, building networks with people who at least live here. They're not the drifter type who might just the next day get up and leave and decide that Poles aren't desperate enough to hang out with anymore and try the Romanians. And I think also you went to the Turkish part. You went to Turkey. So yeah, that's kind of what I want to focus a bit more on. So it means that it's probably less appealing as a channel to many guys who watched this 5 years ago, but it is what it is. For others, like Wayne, it is actually more interesting, I think. The fact that I talk about things like business and building networks and living a more fulfilling life in general, and going to cultural events and playing a role in society and providing value, not just being an extractor. I want to be extractor. Just drifts in and tries to get as much out of the place without really adding anything to it. It's not a great mindset, I think, for the long term and for personal satisfaction and happiness in a place. But it is, I think, the way that this kind of more sovereign man kind of mindset is. I'm going to go where I'm treated best every week and live in all these places. But I think that's a little bit unrealistic in general. I know from what goes on behind the scenes with that particular channel that has that slogan, that it is not all happy sailing. Yes. Seems like he's trying to get him. He's talking a lot about Ireland all the time. It's kind of funny. The West is falling is kind of the mantra of a lot of these channels. But then you want to live in Ireland, get an Irish passport. It couldn't be more Western in Europe than that. So, but yeah, obviously proud of how appealing my homeland is. But it's not where I obviously chose to base my life. For better or worse, I'm here in Ukraine during the Russo-Ukrainian War. So, been on for almost an hour. If you have any other questions, I got David. David, how are things? We haven't spoken for a while. Good to see your name pop up. I'm here in Odesa. I don't know if you're maybe joining this a bit later. I was in Kazakhstan recently. He's also lived in Belarus for 5 years. I didn't realize that you were back there. Thought you were somewhere else last time we spoke, or maybe even before. But yeah, I think the first time we spoke was definitely many years ago at this stage. So yeah, I don't consider Belarus really that appealing in 2025 compared to before. And it's kind of sad to see what has happened to Belarus. The best of Belarus has kind of left, basically. Even the people promoting Belarus, most of them have left. Whether they were Belarusians or foreigners. And they've left because of the lack of economic opportunities. Just like economy is in tatters. And so many young people are more dynamic, have just decided that it's better to move to Poland or Lithuania. So we'll see if it remains independent or not in the next few years, or it'll just be fully absorbed into the Russian Empire. And yeah, here in Odessa, it's definitely a change of the seasons. I don't intend to, as I was there last, it was just before COVID in early 2020. I think it might have been February 2020, because I have been in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan with Angela, and then I flew to Minsk. And I remember Angela came on her way back to Odessa, and we spent a day together in Minsk. And then shortly afterwards, I got a flight to Ukraine, to Odessa. And I remember because, COVID had come up when we were already in Central Asia. And then we realized how serious the whole thing was going to be, and they were shutting down places. And remember, there was one final flight out of Odessa to Minsk. I had to make a decision. Do I take that flight? Do I not take that flight? What's going to happen? They're talking about closing stuff down. And I didn't get on the flight. And then I basically, I didn't leave Ukraine for over 2 years then, until February 25th. So yeah, it was kind of February 2020 last time I was there. And no desire to go back for the foreseeable future. If I want to hang out with Belarusians, I will do so in the Belarusian diasporas in Vilnius in Lithuania and Warsaw, Poland. Pretty strong there, as they are in many other cities. And yeah, it's actually my favorite thing to do when I'm in, especially Warsaw, is go to hang out at Belarusian places. I like them a lot. So I will get my dose of Belarusian culture in those places going forward until things change. Maybe that's me being a little bit more philosophical about the future of Belarus. I talked to so many Belarusians that left, especially those own businesses, and they had to reinvent everything once again in maybe Poland or Lithuania. A lot of them are even moving now to Germany because they have more residency rights and they can set up their businesses elsewhere in the European Union at this point because they've been exiled for this point over 5 years. I don't think they will go back even if things change for the better from their point of view and from my point of view. I think just that country is kind of screwed basically. Lukashenko said in the last year that he plans to bring 200,000 Pakistanis, was it, or 100,000 Pakistanis to work in Belarus. He's like basically with his policies chased out so many of the young people who are productive. So yeah, really, really sad that Belarus may end up, I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit melodramatic with this, but they're going to end up like Jews without a homeland for a long time. They'll just be absorbed into somewhere else, and they'll be told that they're no longer Belarusians, the people who are there. Let's see. That's kind of obviously a pretty pessimistic outlook for that country. Obviously, if Russia is defeated in the Russo-Ukrainian War, then first of all, I think Lukashenko will just, change his tact. You could say he'll stab Russia in the back. Right? He's not really friends with Russia. He's just like wants to stay in power, basically. So Russia was useful for that. But now he's already made more overtures to the US and to Europe in the last few months as his economy crumbles even further, and he wants to not try to create some distance between him and Putin. But yeah, if that changed that dynamic and he wasn't no longer in danger of being invaded, then Belarus, could change. But I just a bit pessimistic that many Belarusians will come back. That's the real pity. I think it's just so long, already 5 years, that and just continued brain drain out of the country, that people set up lives somewhere else. Hard to see most of them coming back. With Ukraine, that's also going to be an issue when this war ends, is how many people are going to come back. Because I think a lot of people who want to come back, they're already here. There are a lot of women in particular who were in Europe for 3 years and now they're back here. They decided this is where they want to live. They've already had their experience there. And yeah, are people really going to flock back? If the situation changes, I think many Ukrainian men will actually leave and try to work in Western Europe and make money. And it's just very hard to foresee at this point what the consequences will be on the population here. It used to be a country of over 55 million people. It already dropped considerably. Low birth rate, high death rate in the 90s, and a lot of emigration out of the country. And I'm not really sure how they will reverse that, but that's a challenge that Ukraine will face after the war ends. And that will end with either an unsatisfactory and probably temporary peace, or it will end when there's full victory over the Kremlin. And I will make more content on the Geopolitics channel. If you want to listen to me talk more about geopolitics, I have another channel, and it's linked down below in the description. Yeah, but I don't foresee the fighting stopping anytime soon. If it does stop, it will just be a temporary pause where Russia will try to regroup its forces for another attack. I don't think Putin in this situation, having committed so much to it, can actually really stay in power if he has a situation where there's no war. It would be very hard for him to do that, so he's just not going to agree to it. In reality, he wants to stay in power indefinitely. So that is the situation. It will take, it will take some sort of reversal in the battlefield that's pretty severe, and then maybe he'll want to pause it so he can restructure the army. But I think that's what it's going to take. And U.S. foreign policy was better than expected in 2022, but since then it could have done a lot better. But anyways, I'll start discussing the geopolitics for a considerable amount of time if I start on it. So only if people write me that they want to listen to that. If you have questions about the lifestyle part, if you're coming here to Ukraine or you're going to somewhere else that I've helped my clients with, which is in 2025, we're going to be no longer Belarus for many years. I haven't gone there with clients since 2019 in person. That was the golden era of life in Minsk, really, I think, for most people. And yeah, it probably will never come back in the same way, as life will be different here in Odessa compared to, say, pre-2020 already. Once this war ends, it will not be the same. And that was the theme of today's live stream, is that there is a big political change, because Turkanov has been stripped of his Ukrainian citizenship, and there is now a military administration. And as if we're coming into this late, it means that the hope is that the defenses, the air defense of Odessa, will now be better organized and more competent to shooting down Russian munitions. And otherwise, it probably just signals more that the old guard of Odessa politics will probably not return. There will probably be a new cadre of politicians here going forward. But let's see, if Turkanov successfully regains his citizenship, then I guess he may at some point get elected again. Just have to see what happens. Wayne says he feels safe. Wayne is actually here in Odessa. So yeah, hopefully it's better organized, but we just have to see. And I'm obviously fine with the risk level of being here in Odessa. I'm rational about it. I have background in international relations, as I said, and I've been living here for many years in the region, so I'm able to make these informed calculations as to risk versus reward. So I don't rely on, obviously not mainstream media, but even most of the alternative media is absolute garbage. It's so bad. I mean, obviously all the whole pro-Russian stuff is normally fantasy, just made up. You could just think back to that clown Gonzalo Lira, the worst immigrant to Ukraine of all time. And yeah, just the fantasy stuff made up. And Russia never came to liberate Kharkiv from his point of view. And that is where he ended his days, in Ukraine. So, but even on the pro-Ukrainian side, I don't watch most of the big content creators, because they just appeal to their audience at this stage, and some of the videos are just completely made up. So it's kind of tricky. I realize more and more that the audience on YouTube is not people who actually really need to know what's going on. Because that number of people in English is going to be so small that providing really good analysis for them, you would have to have it as like a subscription service or something. But to the masses, they're looking more for infotainment. Unfortunately, being part of Team Kremlin or Team Kiev, one or the other. Yeah. So even some of the biggest channels, I can't watch their stuff, because I actually spend my time here. So I need to watch real analysis that's actually going to allow me to make a better decision about my own personal safety and the future of Ukraine and investment, not someone telling me what I want to hear. So yeah, it's kind of frustrating when I look at it. But I am going to model my style of some new videos this week on a successful YouTuber, and he had a terrible video earlier in the week. I was like, it's like, it was complete rubbish. It was actually about Belarus. So yeah, you say you can't watch, Ben says you can't watch the Kiev Post videos. Yeah, there's just a lot of it. I actually watch Combat Veteran Reacts a lot. He's not always on talking from great knowledge when he goes off the main stuff. Like, it seems like if there's another country that's in the news, like Moldova or Belarus, before I guess they Google it, now they put it into ChatGPT, and I think many of them, they just say, what does my audience want to hear? How do I frame it? Because you can put that into ChatGPT, and then you just tell the audience what to hear, and they know nothing about the other country and anything. So yeah, so many of the takes I saw on the elections of Moldova or Belarus' situation, they're clueless, just making stuff up. But then the video gets like 500,000, 1 million views with huge portion of likes, and you're just like, this is as dumb as watching a pro-Russian commentator on the war at this point. So unfortunately, people, they become hostage to their audiences if they're interested as a career and as a business, and they just tell people they want to hear. It's like alt media, the only thing that's worse than mainstream media overall, I would say. Because there's still some good people in mainstream media, but you just need to filter through most of the rubbish as well there and pick out the people who produce good content. Like, I think the BBC have Rosenberg in Moscow. I think he's still a great journalist, even if he's probably constrained to a certain extent what he can say, so he's not expelled from Russia. But yeah, in general, I reacted to one of his videos 3 years ago when he interviewed Lavrov. Lavrov just seemed like had to say all these clownish things constantly. Anyways, any final questions about here in Odessa? Or yeah, Ben says the term is audience capture, hostage to your audience. Yeah, I think that happens a lot with YouTubers. They get a big audience, and then if they say something their audience doesn't want to hear, the views and they drop, and they get a huge number of unsubscribes, and they take that as a message. Oh, I can't make that content anymore, even though it's maybe accurate or what the content creator actually believes. And then they say, okay, so my audience actually wants to hear is another thing, which maybe just made up. So this is an issue in general, I think, with YouTubers. So you really need to. That's what I like about Poland and Convert is I think he's willing to lose his audience, because he says a lot of things that I'm sure his audience don't like. But he's not as big as the others, but he has also subscription service. So anyways, he's one of my favorites, I think, overall. But not saying that everything, that any content creator is obviously a great analysis all of the time, especially since I've noticed they make more and more videos now, and they try to keep them as relevant. They're making 3 a day, 4 a day. So they're becoming more like a news service to try and replace mainstream media in the 24-hour news cycle. So it's kind of interesting from that point of view, but it's very hard to have good analysis. Yeah. But I guess the AI is helping them at least create the videos. But again, that has its own flaws. Any final questions or comments? I managed to stay in for 70 minutes. Not sure how I managed that, because it's a bit chilly here in Odessa. I don't plan to have any more live streams. I know I said that when I was in Almaty. I said I'm doing this one because I happened to come to Kazakhstan. But because of the change in the political situation here in Odessa upon my return, I thought it was good. Also give you a little bit of a debriefing about Kazakhstan and how great it was. And the city is even not that small. So that objection we can dismiss. It's far away. That's one of the biggest issues. It's far away. My client flew from the US, red eye, to go to the show together. He arrived straight off the plane, but he said he slept on the plane, so that was good. And what else about it? I guess the level of English is not super high there. I guess that's maybe an issue as well. So I spoke in Russian for most of the 2 weeks. Let's see, I met people who spoke English, guys and girls as well. But yeah, it's not anywhere near as high as even Odessa. I think Odessa's higher and Moldova's higher. So definitely lower than Poland, or definitely lower than Bucharest. So yeah, that's what I will say for my trip. So if you're interested in going to Kazakhstan in the next year or so, because as I said, I'll probably have planned in February, March, and I guess that's all that's looking likely for now. But it's great to get back there after 2 years. It was just a pity it didn't work out with other clients in that intervening 2 years. And I have another client who's even paid me, but we had a clash. He wanted to go to Astana and not Almaty, and yeah, he couldn't wait for me to be free. So yeah, we'll go with him in the summer to Astana. So I guess I'm 3 trips to Kazakhstan the next year. And if you want to consider New Year's, I think it's maybe the best city in the entire region for New Year's Eve. But I need to obviously test that this New Year's. But I'm thinking that's where I will bring clients if they're open for a New Year's Eve party. We did Riga last year. And yeah, it's just a great place. It's really competitive. But I guess, again, if you are not interested in Asians or the European-Asian fusion, which is what I think Almaty is to a certain extent. I don't think it's like, you could say, purely Asian culture, because it has such a big influence from being in the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union, and a lot of different ethnicities there. Then, yeah, if you're not into that vibe, then it's not going to be the city for you. So I think those are the 2 main objections I get, is not into Asians and it's far away, which is all fair. And then the level of English is probably also a bit of an issue if you don't speak Russian. So I think those are 3 negatives. And I can give you a 4th one, which is staying long term is not as easy visa-wise as it is going to be in Ukraine or Moldova or Poland or Romania or anywhere like that. So you see some kids out throwing stuff towards the port on a Sunday afternoon here in Odesa, Mama, on the shores of the Black Sea. Changes, it's kind of what I had a premonition about when I made that live stream, that c'est la fin, it's the end of an era. Definitely a new area will blossom here in Odesa post-war. And it looks like it will be without its mayor of over 10 years, Gennady Trukhanov, since he has been stripped of Ukrainian citizenship and now the city is under military administration. But on a practical level, the only major change if you were to come here is that I can see is that maybe the air defenses will be better coordinated, which is a plus. And otherwise, it probably doesn't make any difference to your experience. So unless I have some more questions or comments, I will wrap it up. David, in general, if you want to send me an email even and let me know how you're getting on, good to get to touch base. And Wayne, we will chat. Ben, we will chat. And Dan in inverted commas, probably not chat, but you're always free to leave a comment here. And I think that's it. It's like when people really comment are people I know. Kind of except for the very first commenter who had strange comments. So definitely a different live stream. And as I said, I don't plan to do any more of these. I will plan to have a few things. I'm finally producing this Ukrainian program to learn Ukrainian. Apologies to everybody invested. It took so long, but I give myself a deadline to December 1st. I will not be doing it with the teacher any longer because she hasn't produced it. And it's been over a year and that's kind of ridiculous. So I'm going to just have to produce it myself. But I have learned over 10 languages, so this shouldn't be, to make a basic language course, should still be fine. I have to spend a lot more of my own time as opposed to paying the teacher to produce it, which was my original idea because it would be quicker. And use a native speaker then for the pronunciation. That's my plan, and I will start working on that tomorrow or Tuesday. We'll see how far. I need to go through all the video content for the fashion shows and actually label it and figure out what we're going to do with it and review one video that I should have a draft of tomorrow. And yeah, so I'll be working on that program, and also I plan to launch a new program depending on where we'll do, I guess in the past we've done it over Zoom, so it'll be more interactive than the live streams here on YouTube, in the sense that we'll be there together. You can pop on, obviously you can have video or audio and ask your questions and make it more, with a bit more of a community aspect. It may be the case that I'll have to wait until this war is over and make it about Ukraine going forward, because I'm a bit skeptical that when I talk about so many countries, like I talk about Moldova, Poland, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, I think the audience is probably a bit too disparate to put on the same call. I think there is enough of a concentration and a focus. I think one for, I had the Slavic Utopia Secrets Ukraine. I will obviously rebrand that going forward and make it maybe New Europe relocation. I think I had a name for it, Wayne, that I sent you. I'll have a look what I had. Anyways, I'll come up with a new name and have a program like that for guys who want to either come before the war ends and actually make it a lot higher value than, say, just having the guide. And we tried to Discord, but it didn't seem like there was enough of esprit de corps there. And yeah, definitely for post-war, but I think even for beforehand. And again, if you want to set up a Ukrainian company, write me an email, connor@connorklein.com. That is one thing that I'll probably make a video about next week, since I see a lot of value in that. And yeah, I'm going to end the video. And I already was at the gym today, since it closes at 3 o'clock. And I will enjoy my nice evening here. We still have some sunshine. That's why I started a bit earlier. It's 5:15. I guess we have it for another 45 minutes before the sun sets. In a quite peaceful Odesa, even if under a military administration, or because it's under a military administration now, it's a little bit more peaceful. But we are coming into the colder weather. It definitely feels very autumn and a bit chilly. here on the shores of the Black Sea. So I will leave it at that. Don't know when there will be another live stream here on YouTube. I guess if there's a big development in the Russo-Ukrainian war, I will do one. I will be doing regular live streams on the geopolitics and the updates. Again, the link to that channel is down below in the description. So I'll be focusing on that quite a bit while I'm here in Ukraine. I will also have a lot of new content. So that's probably the channel to follow for that. I will have an interview. Actually, it will be Ben who commented here. That should be out by maybe Tuesday on the channel. And I also gave an interview for another channel, but I will say more about that in due course, because he's not going to have it in his channel for a few weeks. It's with an Asian American. I think he's also a US citizen who has a channel for basically for dating. I think he rebranded as like high level communication, but I mean, it's really about dating. And that's where the high level communication is. I gave him an interview, and that will be out on his channel in a few weeks. So other than that, if you're planning to come here, you got the guides down below, you got the consulting options, and you have the in-person premium experience. So invest in those or apply for the in-person experience. The applications down below. And there will be lots of more content coming up from Riga in Latvia, Chisinau, Moldova, and Kazakhstan in the next few months. And I'll leave it at that. From a little bit chilly autumn Odesa Mama, on the shores of the Black Sea. Once again, do pobачення and do перемоги.